Given the election today, let's go ahead and just go through the down ballot races and where I predict people will win and lose at the ballot box when it comes to the Senate and the House of Representatives, plus gubernatorial races. So, to start off with, let's tackle the House. So, the House of Representatives is extremely close, and you could really have a scenario in which Donald Trump wins, loses the House, Kamala wins, Republicans win the House. But generally speaking, it'll go both ways. Both will go together in either scenario, but there is a niche of that because it's exactly this problem. We have about 18 toss up seats in this election, and it could go either way. So let's just break them down one by one. Here, we're already faced with a dilemma. So, Mary Patola, in the case of Alaska's single district, is somebody who's running again after 2022, winning in a way that is pretty suspicious. Look, the point being is that they have this primary system and election system that works in a way to where the conventional candidate, as a conservative in, let's say, Alaska, is not going to go head to head to a Democrat in the typical sense. Well, what I mean is that this is what makes it so weird and fishy, is that Alaska will have an election system to where they'll have, let's say, one pseudo moderate in Mary Patola versus two separate Republicans, and then see who wins the best out of three. In this case, it really complicates things. You had Sarah Palin in the mix earlier. I see it as a Democrat victory for now, narrowly, that being said, but, we'll give it to him for now. When it comes to David Schweikart in Arizona, though, this is one that you got to really just give to the former representative. By former, I mean continuing representative. The guy seems to be almost Teflon like because he's had the scandal over God knows what for several years, and he's still going to beat the no name candidate in Amish Shah. In fact, David Schweikart did not even debate Amish Shah, from what I recall, because again, he was so much in the lead in his own head. And so, from that perspective, we have somebody in the House who outperformed President Trump actually in 2020 when it came to Arizona. So, he seems to be having a better grip on those McCainite Republicans that are so finite a resource for the Democratic Party to flip over to then win the House in Arizona. So, when it comes down to it, the brass tacks is that we do have David Schweikart winning. Arizona's looking fantastic for Trump, so that's going to bear in very good results. Now, when it comes to Siscomani, though, this is also a very good retained seat for the Republican Party. Juan Siscomani outperformed Trump in 22 as compared to the 2020 election result. I live in his district, the 6th in Arizona. In fact, I've met him multiple times, and guess what? I think he has a great appeal. Again, Hispanic. If you're bilingual in Southern Arizona, you're killing it in all facets. Not talking about me, but him, but also me. And so at that point, he's easily going to win. He outperformed Trump already. Kirsten Engel's running for, I think, a second or a third time. She sucks as a candidate. Bias is right there at the door. But now with John Duarte, very interesting prospect here. He won in a district that Biden won by 10. So it's indicative of a couple different things here. So looking at, obviously, District 13, I think the Duarte will hold on. And sorry, no, wait, is it a Democrat? No, wait, hold on. How is this looking? Oh, yeah, no, it's Republican. Yeah, because obviously I see it as a multiplicity of different things going on in California. So it's pretty obvious to me that California, while obviously conventional wisdom would be that it's super far left, and it's true, there's certain bright spots in it that are red, of course, like Orange County, but also other places within and without rural California, etc. And I do believe that California, as a state, totality-wise, will trend Republican in the league of several points. Reason being is that while, yeah, okay, California might be, let's say, instead of Democrat plus 30, might be Democrat plus 22. That makes a huge difference in all these swing districts. So in the case of Duarte, a negative 11 in the 2020 election could bode to be pretty damn near a Trump win in that district, given the swing of obviously Hispanic vote more than even the white vote, some black vote, etc. Things are looking pretty good. Again, House Republicans have been doing a fantastic job, and this applies to Republicans statewide at doing a good job shoring up the early vote and the mail-in vote. Republicans did a great job at this in 2020. They retained a lot of those seats in 22, and so I think that will bode well for them this election cycle today. David Valadao, also somebody who is being hit and was hit by Trump for supporting DACA and stuff like this. But again, that kind of shows that he's resilient and understands the demography and the sort of voter clientele he's trying to, get to reelect him. And so I think he's going to stay as well. Mike Garcia, also another Teflon type candidate. I don't think he'll lose this election. Will he lose more hair in his head? It's a balding joke. Yes, but he'll retain the spot. Ken Calvert, same thing. generally, I believe Trump will win the popular vote. So if you got two reds here, again, one indicating, Trump winning the district in 2020, and then also what the 22 result was for that incumbent candidate, you'll see that obviously two reds obviously mean that, Trump's going to carry this person with a coattail, assuming it's not a super crazy candidate. Michelle Steele, another Republican win. Easy, easy. Now, for Katie Porter, retiring to run for U.S. Senate in California. Well, this is an interesting one and a dilemma at hand. The Katie Porter district seems to be pretty difficult to ascertain either way. Obviously, if she were the incumbent, I'd give her the W easily for the Democratic Party, but that's not really the case as she's running for Senate, like I said. So at that point, it leaves it more open. That being said, do we know much about Scott Baugh as a candidate? Again, I can't have the free time to follow the dozens of candidates at all times. But from what I know, it's not like he has this sort of like fundraising advantage from being a celebrity. So at that point, it just gets to the brass tacks of what the environment will be national wise, and then micro analyze it into the district. Again, very nerdy talk, but the point being is that if Biden won that district by 11, and even in a 22 year, like the midterm, that was favorable to Republicans, however a puddle it was compared to the wave people were expecting, I still believe that 24 might not be as favorable as a setting in California as is 22. And even if it is better, is it 3.5 points better? It really is too much of a question, so I'll just lean towards putting it slightly Democrat for now. Lauren Boebert will keep that seat, or no, wait. Yeah, wait. Never mind. So two reds. She's moving to a more Republican district, but she would have to, frankly. Now you have Caraveo, who's a very interesting prospect here, against Gabe Evans. So let's look at this race for a couple different aspects. So on one hand, you have Caraveo, who's an Hispanic. So that's good in Colorado. That being said, and this gets to the other point, there's a change in demography in Colorado, specifically that state, among others in the Southwest, that makes it more predisposed to vote Democrat, though obviously the Hispanic trends have been voting pretty well for Republicans, so that should offset several years of immigration in a negative context for them electorally. But with that being said, of course, Gabe Evans, again, no national name recognition that I can ascertain. Beside it, also, let's look at the math here. Joe Biden won that district by 4.6. Then Caraveo, or whatever her name is, Yadira, she won by less than a single point in 22. So that's pretty interesting to me. Well, the reason why I point this out, by the way, is because I do believe that Trump will do about 5 points better in Colorado. That just makes sense to me. But though I could be wrong. So if you just take it at that face value, I don't see why Gabe Evans wouldn't ride the coattails to flip that district, which is a controversial opinion, I know. Now, when it comes to Jahana Hayes, she's an awful candidate. I mean, you can just see that she underscored Biden by about 10 percentage points in 22. Again, let's go on to Anna Luna. She's easily going to win. Marianne Miller Meeks. She won by like 6 votes like 4 years ago or something crazy. It's insane. But yeah, she's going to be fine. Zach Nunn, again, that's going to be a pretty easy win. Again, the wind is at the back of the Republicans is the way I would like for you guys to consider it. Now, when it comes to Jared Golden, interesting one. Jared Golden has been resilient for several years at this point. I think he actually straddles the line pretty intelligently between being a Democrat, but also somebody who's amenable to Trump in a second district there in Maine, which is pretty interesting insofar as demography is concerned, as you have a lot of WASP vote there. But Alyssa Slotkin is not running for her incumbent seat in the Congress. So she's running for Senate against Michael Rogers in Michigan. So Michigan 7th is interesting for a couple different reasons. So Michigan 7th is an open district, so that makes it a lot easier for people to kind of make their name heard there. But also keep in mind that Alyssa Slotkin is fantastic at fundraising historically. So while that might not help Republicans at the Senate level, when it comes down to maybe a pittance here in the 7th district, you'll see that somebody like Tom Barrett will have a more equal playing field than people that have been going against Slotkin the past almost decade at this point. So again, Biden won the district by 0.5. Slotkin won it in 22 by 5.4, which is remarkable. But she also has that appeal. She's a big name in Michigan. So at that point, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Plus, you're on a ballot with Tudor Dixon. A lot of Michigan candidates for the Republicans were suffering. Point being, though, is that I do think this seat will flip because, again, it's a very hard one to call either way. But I do personally believe that if Trump wins the district, let's say in this case by 5, then, Alyssa Slotkin, you take away the strong Democrat aspect, and now you put in a generic Republican, and they probably win by 1. So anyway, looking at Dan Kildee, though. So my final point when it comes to Dan Kildee is that I believe that since he's not running, there is an argument that obviously there is this like existent Democratic nomenclature going back way past and even before obviously 2013 when Kildee was first elected. So now that he's retiring, I do personally believe that Paul June will probably flip the result. Again, the incumbent Democrat outperformed Biden by 8 points in this district in Michigan. The numbers don't look good for the Democrats, to be quite clear. So, again, I'm pretty bullish on Trump and the Republican candidates, but I think I'll be right again. John James, Michigan's 10th. He's looking solid. Ryan Zink also pretty easily will retain Montana there. Don Davis, I do believe this district is trending pretty nicely for Republicans here in North Carolina. I think it got districted, what, to the 6th? I don't know. It's confusing. Oh, sorry. No, NC 6. Okay. Am I confused here? Anyway, so we're going to keep going down to Don Bacon. Don Bacon, damn, this is hard. So Don Bacon overperformed Trump, obviously, by maybe 4 to 5 points in 2020, or maybe, no, more than that even. So he's pretty good as a candidate. That being said, of course, he does have to straddle a line between not pissing off too many MAGA people and, of course, appeasing the liberal-leaning independents. And the demography of Omaha has been all but atrocious for Republicans for the longest time. And so, really, this leftward trend in Nebraska can be attributed mostly to Omaha expanding in a bad way. Think about Boulder, Colorado. Just that trajectory. Very nasty stuff. Point being, though, is that Don Bacon doesn't have an uphill battle. Again, I don't really see Trump flipping the Nebraska 2nd District by anything at all, and I don't think he'll win it even. So if that's the case, then Don Bacon has to overperform in a general election, which is pretty difficult. He's going against Tony Vargas, who's, I think, running for the second time, both similar to the Siscomani-Engel competition we have going on right now in Arizona. I right now will give the win to, damn, who am I going to give it to? Here's my thing. Here's my theory, and this is just my guess. I think Don Bacon's going to lose. The reason why he's most likely going to lose, though, is because Don Bacon is a few points better than Trump when it comes to appeal in that general area. But I think the area got more blue numbers-wise. Even if, again, the election is better overall for Republicans, margin-wise in the 2nd District, I think the demography is less favorable. So it's really in spite of the underlying factors that maybe Bacon does better than expected in the nomenclature. That being said, I don't think he'll win. And so also just keep in mind Nebraska is very limp node. And I'm referring to something else too, the very limp stick, because we're going to do this whole thing, this courting of the whole, like, oh, we're going to get all of our electoral votes to, to go Republican, presumably. And they fumble it. They don't get it done. It's pathetic. I think Democrats smell blood in the water. At least I would if I were them. And say, well, you know what? Screw this. We're going to vote out Don Bacon. And I think Tony Vargas might win. So I'll just lean towards him taking that seat right over. Now, I like the odds for Yvette Harrell, the Republican challenger to Gabriel Vasquez in New Mexico's 2nd District. Reason that I point that out, by the way, is because Gabriel Vasquez is somebody who, again, does not have national acclaim, but also Yvette Harrell has the benefit of Trump rallying on Halloween, I believe, in New Mexico, which probably, in my opinion, shows that the Trump internals have him pretty close in New Mexico. And given the fact that Biden won the state by over 10 points, I believe, in 2020, again, bodes well that Yvette Harrell will win the district easily, because think about it. You see that, Biden won this district in particular, not the state, but the district, the second one, by 6 percentage points, or slightly below it. Gabriel Vasquez in 2022 underscores that by 5.2. So that looks really good for Yvette Harrell as a standard Republican. But again, a pretty Hispanic name, Yvette is. Okay, so I'll give that to the Republicans. Plus, again, Latino turnout will be way better than proportionately in 22 and in 2020. Again, New Mexico, major recipient of Latino vote, of course. Then, secondly, obviously, when it comes to fracking leases and natural oil exploitation, Republicans are going to beat the Democrats over the head with it if they know what they're doing. So I believe that that should be a pretty practical flip, in my opinion. Now, when it comes to Despacito, this is a little harsh. All right, so looking at Despacito, I really do think that he's probably going to lose, because you really have to do, again, 14 points better than Biden 2020, and I just don't see it happening. It doesn't really matter who the Democrat is at that point. He could be running against Bernie Sanders. He'd probably still lose somehow. It's just too big of a margin. Again, New York will trend disproportionately more Republican than even the national environment would dictate. That being said, it still wouldn't be enough. If New York is 8 points more Republican than usual, that still wouldn't really cut it. So we're going to flip that blue, believe it or not. Lawler, on the other hand, I think he could win. Actually, I think he could win because, again, He won this in 22 when Biden won it by 10. The margin in New York will be a lot better for Republicans, but also I do believe that Mondaire Jones has no sauce. Who the hell is that? And I think him being an incumbent Lawler, that is, will probably do better proportionately than if he were to be a new guy. So that's going to be great for him. Again, that's pretty out there for me to say as a prediction, but there you go. 19th District, Molinaro. That should be Republican pretty easily. Again, will Trump do 4.5 points better in that part of New York? I think it's pretty conceivable. Brandon Williams, on the other hand, looking really tough. So we're going to keep that blue, actually. Marcy Carpenter. I think she will lose. Now, again, am I crazy? She's been in there for 40 years, but let's count this as her last term, please. Okay? Think about it. Trump won the district by 3 in 2020. She outperformed again by 16, but that's on an off election year, not a presidential election year. Plus, again, she's aged another 2 years. That does not bode well. It's cool to be an incumbent for a few terms, but like you're going in for, term 20, and it's like, okay, have you done anything for me lately is what I would ask. And then plus, obviously, she's just so old. And then beside that, by the way, maybe I'm wish casting, but also, if Trump is going to do better in Ohio, which I predict he will, then what the hell makes it seem as if he won't, win that district by, another 3 to 5 points? And if that's the case, then I see that Derek Marin has more of a cushion. So I think this is a flip, and that's a crazy thing for me to say. Now, with Amelia Sykes, similar logic here. Biden won this district by 3 or 2.8. I think that Trump will win this. If you just add, the amount that he's going to win the popular vote by, I think he will win this election right here by coattails. Again, who cares who Kevin Coughlin is? Amelia Sykes by no means is a Bill Clinton circa 1996. So by this logic, yeah, I do think this is a flip. Again, pretty bullish, but you got to believe me. Lori Chavez de Remer, again, Republican retain the seat. Yeah, of course. Oregon, again, not the most favorable place for Donald Trump. But don't get me wrong here. If she outperformed Biden by that much, that seems that she's pretty good as a candidate, and that's great. Plus, again, I think the state will be closer, even if it doesn't trend as far right, relatively speaking, as compared to a place like New York, which seems somewhat oxymoronic that New York would trend more right than does Oregon, but that's just the way it is. Anyway, Susan Wild in Pennsylvania. We're going to give it to Ryan McKenzie. Again, very narrow margins. I think Trump will flip these margins easily. Matt Cartwright. Again, I'm being very in-depth here, but we're going to skim through these as fast as possible. That's a flip as well. Again, numbers-wise, it checks out. Scott Perry retains the seat easily. 10 years in Congress, 12. Got a lot of experience. Chris DeLuzio, very close here. Pennsylvania's 17th district. Biden won it by 5.8. Chris outperformed that by 1. So he looks to be stronger than Biden, which is interesting. So will Trump do 6 points better in this district? I really doubt it. So I think he'll retain the spot. Plus, he's also an incumbent, so retaining the spot is that much more easy. Vicente Gonzalez, not going to be too hard. Myra Flores will probably get destroyed here. Jen Kagan's second district, she will easily keep that district, in my opinion. Abigail Spanberger is retiring to run for governor. She is definitely your standard suburban Democrat mom, so to speak. So she'd be a good fit for re-election here, but she's not going for it. Kind of like Slotkin in Michigan. Anyway, you have Eugene Vindman versus Derek Anderson. This election, honestly, would be a coin toss, but because Eugene Vindman, from what I've seen, has a lot of fundraising relative to the other candidates and seems to be stronger than most, it seems like he's going to have that seat stay blue, which is unfortunate because I saw a video of the guy basically being caught in a lie about fighting in combat, and I think it's pathetic for him to do that. But anyway, he'll stay in the House. I guess he'll win that seat probably, which is too bad. Now, Maria Perez will probably lose to Joe Kent, who was super close to winning in 22. He ran an awful campaign, by all means, not very professional in my estimation. Again, I used to follow it closely 2 or 3 years ago. But I think that, with that experience of losing so painfully and so close, wow, razor thin that margin was in 22. Imagine, less than 1 point. Anyway, Trump won the district in 2020. He'll do better this time in Washington, I believe. Should be a pretty easy flip there. And then Derek Van Orden in Wisconsin's third should keep that seat pretty damn easily. So there you go. Let's check out on the actual final result for the map here. We have Republicans at 229 seats with the Democrats at 206. That means that they won it by a net of 23. And by that, I mean that they have a margin of 23 more seats than Democrats, which means that you could lose up to like about 11 or 12 defections and still get a majority vote in the House, which is pretty remarkable in my opinion. So the House majority expands from a very, very, very narrow one to a pretty nice one right there. Very quick, let's address the gubernatorial races. So the ones I filled out don't need to be discussed, but I will tell you about these two right here. So Chris Sununu is not running again for New Hampshire governor, which kind of sucks because he would win easily, like he has for several years at this point. But we do have Kelly Ayotte, who was very much a hair away from winning the Senate in 2016, which would have made a sizable difference in that first administration for Trump, by the way. So Kelly Ayotte will run ahead of Trump in a state that's already kind of close, low key. And so I do think that she will have a lot of that Chris Sununu kind of like white support. Kind of hard to explain, but definitely less controversial than Trump and more appealing in a broad scope. And so I think she will win this governorship pretty easily. Maybe call it, I don't know, 2 to 6% margin, but not that it matters. North Carolina, on the other hand, Big Rob took a big L several weeks ago on CNN with that bombshell. My goodness. Jesus Christ. What is it? Oh, man. Wow. Anyway, hard to believe it was true. It was true. But anyway, so Mark Robinson will almost definitely lose. The polls are so bad I won't even bother showing them. He's down like 15. Again, it'll be a lot closer because, again, coattails wise, it's hard to explain. But basically, if Trump is going to win North Carolina at all, then for a Republican beneath him to lose by 15 at the state level is asinine. It just doesn't really happen. Will he still lose it by, let's say, 5 or 7 or whatever? Sure. So I do think that's going to be a Democratic hold over Roy Cooper there, who I believe is term limited in North Carolina, something like that. So that's pretty bad news for Republicans at the gubernatorial level. So it's pretty much homeostasis, so to speak. Alrighty, folks, I think it's time to address the Senate candidacies of several different people. There's less than even 10 toss-up states. I do think New Mexico might be a little closer than people expect, but not that it really matters. Texas is not really in contention, in my opinion. I think Ted Cruz will win this pretty easily. Will he do worse than Trump? Yes, certainly. Trump will probably win Texas in and around 10 percentage points. Cruz would probably win it by like 6, to be fair, but we're not even going to look into it too much. Now, let's narrow down this election. So, first and foremost, West Virginia, instant flip. Joe Manchin, he gave up. He knew he was going to take an L, so he's like, okay, I'm bowing out. So that's an instant flip. If Trump were to win the election, J.D. Vance would be the tiebreaker in a Republican majority, similar to what the Democrats have now with Kamala Harris. Not a good comparison to make, not a flattering one, but that's what it is. Now, Tim Sheehy in Montana will easily beat the not 10-fingered John Tester. Did you know he was missing a finger? Anyway, John Tester will get destroyed here. Not even close, and I can't wait to see it. He sucks. Okay, now, Virginia. That's a bad one. That's a bad one. That's a doozy, frankly, because Virginia is a state that I believe will be a lot closer this election than it was in 2020, but also even maybe a little closer than it was in 2016. Well, if that's the case, then maybe Hung Kao, who I respect a lot, is a veteran and is of a diverse background. You could respect him a lot, and I do. But he might be running ahead of Trump, you might be asking. But as of the polling, that's not really the case. So if he's behind Trump at all, then he's almost definitely going to lose, which is too bad because I like him. But I think he will lose to probably the most generic, boring 60-year-old white dude ever, Democrat, in Tim Kaine. But there we go. So Democrats already have a floor of 43. All the other states are not really competitive, but I will move on to Ohio. So Ohio, when you look at the polling, is pretty nuts. So on one hand, again, all the polls have Moreno basically winning, if not tied. He's up in the aggregate by by how much is that? 1.7. So he's likely to win by the mainstream polls, which again skew liberal, if you can believe that. Oh my God! But anyway, obviously it was predicting way more bluer turnout. A few weeks ago and even months ago, they had Sherrod Brown winning. I, of course, called BS on that because, of course, I'm right about this and almost everything. And so Moreno does seem to be poised to win, and so that's pretty clear. Margin-wise, though, that's what I'm curious about. I personally have Trump winning Ohio by, let's say, 10 points. So if that's the case, then I do personally predict that Moreno will probably win the seat by, like, maybe, I'd call it 4, which is like a lean margin. Maybe 4, 5, 6. I don't think, this whole business of, he's going to win by 1%. Like, get over yourself, really? Are you kidding me? Yeah, the Trump Sherrod Brown voters are really prominent in Ohio. That's just asinine. But then again, I've only been to the airport in Ohio, so I don't know. But let's move on. So Republicans have 52 seats already. So the next most likely state to go either way, I believe, is going to be most likely, yikes, I don't know. Let's go with Arizona. Well, when you look at Arizona, the polls are somewhat disconcerting. So when you start off here, you'll notice that when it comes to Gallego versus Kerry Lake, it's an open seat for one. But we do have familiar faces running in this election. So for whatever reason, RCP is glitching out on me, which I've had this issue for like a week now. But the point being though, is that the aggregate has gone from like Kerry losing from over 7 points a few weeks ago to now she's losing by about 3.2 right now, which is actually a lot more narrow, obviously, than a lot of people were anticipating. I saw this coming months in advance, by the way. Again, Oracle, but we'll see. So when it comes to the polls, though, I can give you the most recent one, and three of them even. And so we have one from Atlas Intel, which is super accurate. You've got Trafalgar, which is pretty accurate. And you also have the Hill and Emerson, which is more meh. And so when you look at those three results and you kind of average them together, it kind of shows that, again, it's a tie. There's a tie, and then Gallego by 5. So where's the truth here? Well, I have Trump winning Arizona, and handsomely so. So at that point, it just becomes a question of how much will Kerry need to be close to Trump in the coattails for her to win the election. Well, and just to put it in layman's terms, I do personally believe that Kari Lake will underperform Trump. There's no way that's not going to happen. Not to the degree, obviously, that Mark Robinson will in North Carolina, but she will underperform to some modicum. Now, in 2020, the Senate polls had Martha McSally way behind Trump when it came to the Biden context in 2020. Then she ended up only lagging behind him by like 2 or so percentage points. So I think that should be the same way, where Trump is leading Arizona in the polls conventionally by about 2 points, and yet Kari Lake is down by 3.2 right now in the aggregate. So that's a 5 point separation. Given what happened with McSally, I do believe that polling miss will happen again. And so at that point, it becomes a question of, well, how much does Trump have to win Arizona for Kari to win? In my opinion, if Trump were to win Arizona by more than like 3, I think Kari has an over 50% shot at winning. And that seems to be my prediction, actually. So, not to spoil my next video coming out shortly, but I do believe that Kari Lake will win the Senate seat, which, again, I've been predicting to be Democrat for months in a row here. But I honestly do believe it. We are over, I think the Republicans are in an R+8 environment, not even including election day vote, which we'll see shortly. And so if that's the case, then I think it looks pretty good for Kari. And again, I only thought that, oh, Kari might win if Trump wins by a lot. And that only really became evident recently. And so I think I will give this one to Kari. I could be totally wrong about it, but I will give Kari the smallest win, obviously tilt. Tilt means by less than 2. So now moving on to Nevada. Nevada is a state that's also pretty difficult to ascertain what it is. So insofar as aggregated numbers that come, you'll see that Atlas Intel has, when you look at the aggregate for Nevada, Jackie Rosen, the incumbent that won in 2018 for the first time, she's going against Sam Brown, of course. We call him Mr. Deadpool. Anyway, he won't be offended. Anyway, so Sam Brown has been behind by a lot of points, and I chalked it up to basically, well, he doesn't have name recognition, and so it's going to tighten up as the election goes on, and I've been right, but not to the degree that you would like to see, frankly. You have the Democrat up by about 4.9 points when you have all the polls amalgam together. And so that's not looking good. In fact, he's worse off than Kari Lake in the respect of the polling. I believe that he'll have an easier time getting all the Trump vote versus Kari Lake, where she is a little more non-appealing to certain folks, especially the McCain types. Whereas with Nevada, there's not this like McCain concentration of Republicans, so it's a little more complicated to understand. That being said, we can just take a glance at the Atlas Intel poll, which again I know is the most accurate pollster in the last election cycle in 2020. And so when you look at it that way, you'll notice that Rosen and Brown are both tied at 46, which leaves a lot of undecided. But that might be a little confusing, as obviously we're so close to the election literally today. How could there be so much undecided? Well, in my opinion, it seems like it just goes down to who wins on top, and then whoever wins the presidency in Nevada would basically be the person that carries the guy or gal in the Senate above the finish line when it comes to counting the ballots. So anyways, this is probably the nicest poll I've seen for Brown in like the entire race, where it's tied. You see the one right below it, Data for Progress, which again is a Democrat-sponsored poll. They have Rosen up by 7. So when you really meld those two together, it seems like the honest result is that Brown loses by 3. Though, in my opinion, Trump doing so well in Nevada when it comes to the early vote bodes well for him. And so I do think that Brown has a decent chance of winning here. I really have a hard time putting the math in my head, though. Now, to be fair to myself, when we look at the demographic swingometer, which is the software I use to kind of get the percentages as to what the vote's going to look like, It does seem pretty good for Trump. Just using cocktail napkin math, you'll see that Trump actually is up over Harris by almost 4 points. Obviously you have a blue collar trend, culinary worker abstination, basically from shilling Kamala like they have for other Democrats historically. You have the white college vote not really mattering in this case, kind of staying in homeostasis. You've got black vote obviously going down in turnout, which is good for Republicans, but also becoming more Republican in general. In specific, by the way, young black men under 30, I believe, but 45 too. And then Hispanic Latino support, again, Trump losing it typically by 30, historically would be losing it by anywhere from like 10 to 15. And so if that's the case, then it seems likely that Trump would be winning the state by upwards of 50,000 votes, where Biden only won the state officially by about 2.4% in 2020. And so if that's the case, then it seems likely that Trump might carry over Sam Brown. Reason being in this case, because again, if Trump wins by, let's say, 3 or 4, what is that 3 or 4, or in this case, like 9% of Trump voters that would be voting for Catherine Cortez Masto or Jackie Rosen in this case? Why would they do that? It doesn't really make sense. Jackie Rosen is not really like a blue collar labor Democrat. She's just a white lady. It's like at that point, you're probably not going to see a lot of ticket splitting. And so for that reason, I'm going to give Sam Brown the victory. Again, I'm very bullish, but if I'm right, and we are, it's 3 a.m. right now, so we'll see the votes soon enough. But honestly, I feel it. Who's more likely to win between these two? I'm not sure at all. I'd say probably Kari Lake because Arizona's looking fantastic numbers-wise. But anyway, so 54 seats for Republicans thus far, 43 for Democrats. We have the Rust Belt here. So let's break this down bar for bar. So we're going to start off with Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, which has a lot of different numbers going for it. But let's look at the actual vote when it comes to the general prospect for the Senate candidate here. So when you look at, for instance, Bob Casey versus McCormick, you'll see that McCormick is down by 1.8 against Casey, which is actually really, really close when you look at it. Casey had been leading McCormick by like Gallego Kari Lake numbers, several points, 7, 9%, 8%. And then recently, McCormick has basically caught up to be right behind Trump, shadowing Trump politically as he's trying to grab onto his coattails for dear life. And that's exactly what he needs to do. And also McCormick has the benefit of having a lot of money to shower the state with ads too, which a lot of other candidates do not have the privilege of having, such as Kari Lake, who's outspent like 4 or 5 to 1. Aside from that travesty, we do have, again, Pennsylvania with more favorable fundraising, more even level playing field, so to speak. You have Elon campaigning in that state. And so for that reason, I do believe it should bode pretty well for Republicans. But aside from just that, you see, you honestly see that not so much that Republicans have gained a lot, and that was a big glitch by me, Biden moment almost. Okay, so you'll see that obviously Republicans are better off in 24 electorally than they were in 2020. That being said, of course, it's not even that, but even since 2022, where we had these huge foibles when it came to Mehmet Oz, and you had Fetterman, and sorry, what's the guy's name, Mastriano, get crushed by Shapiro at the gubernatorial level. These people, in 22, gave Pennsylvania Republicans a bad name. But I will tell you that Republicans are a lot more poised to win this because, again, the amount of registrations that have been not so much going Republican, but more so just the atrophying of Democratic turnout is looking really good for Republicans. And if you look at the debates like I have between the two candidates for Senate in Pennsylvania, you'll notice that McCormick is decent, whereas when you look at Casey, he comes off as super out of touch, and his like subtle lisp is also disconcerting, but that might just be me. Anyway. All right, so let's look at some recent polls in this case. So we have several. You have Morning Consult, which is super liberal. You have Casey winning by 3. You have Trafalgar, which is a pretty accurate, again, they could say conservative leaning. I'd say truth leaning. That sounds kind of tacky, but it's true, like insofar as polling accuracy. McCormick up by 1. You'll see Muhlenberg College, which I don't know about, Casey plus 3. You've got Insider Advantage with Casey plus 1. New York Times, which is liberal, Casey plus 5. Throw that one away. You go up to the most recent one as of yesterday, Sunday, Monday, what was it? Anyway, November 3rd. You have Atlas Intel, which is pretty accurate. Casey up by 2, but again, not over 50%. If you're not over 50%, that means that you could still lose. So that's interesting. Then the Hill Emerson has it completely tied 47 to 47. So that seems more accurate, frankly. So in this case, it seems likely that if Trump were to win the state of Pennsylvania by more than 2 percentage points, that McCormick would win. Because McCormick is only down 1.8, and Trump is only up in Pennsylvania, if I look here, by about 0.4. So that's a 2.2% deficit that he's running against Trump. I personally believe that Pennsylvania will be more Republican than even that. Again, I might seem crazy, but I just believe it. And so if that's the case, then we're going to give the state to McCormick narrowly by tilt margin, obviously. But again, Casey, stronger candidate than usual, but he's dealt a bad hand of cards when he has to protect the record and defend the record of him voting for 98% of what Biden wanted him to do in Congress. So it is what it is. Now, Michigan, open seat. Interesting. Well, if you look at the Senate polling for Michigan, you'll notice that, again, while Trump is losing the state to Kamala by 0.5 in the common sense, or sorry, not the mainstream polling, you'll notice that Slotkin is actually up by 2.3, which is actually pretty good for her. Obviously, you see right here on the right of the screen, it's 2.3. So she's outperforming Kamala, which is not surprising. Obviously, she has more appeal to her own state. That makes a lot of sense. But when we look at the Michigan polling, which is pretty recent too, you'll notice that Atlas Intel has Slotkin up by 1. Again, 49 to 48, so nobody's at 50. You'll look at Slotkin, again, up by 4 in the case of Hill and Emerson, which is more liberally slanted. And if you look at some other polls that are somewhat recent, you'll notice that in Michigan, Slotkin is winning by 2 here, and by these other two pollsters, it's a tie. And I tend to believe that, frankly, where, you have Slotkin, who is, again, a better candidate for Michigan than is Kamala. So the question is there, because Mike Rogers, for all intents and purposes, is just a generic Republican in this case. The bottom line is, will Mike Rogers shadow enough Trump to win the election? I believe he would. How many people would vote for, Trump but then Slotkin? Not many. I know a few that I can envision that, but how many though? I think that Mike Rogers is pretty unproblematic in the larger sense. And so at that point, if Trump wins the state of Michigan by like upwards of 1.5, I think that Mike Rogers would win. I think Trump is poised to win Michigan by a few points. So I think that it's going to be ever so slightly Republican, though I could be wrong again. So I'm being very optimistic. Maybe you could blame me for that, but I just believe it. But now when it comes to Eric Hovde versus Tammy Baldwin, the most recent polls, like by Atlas, again, I love Atlas. Baldwin 49, Hovde 48, so a margin of 1. That's pretty good. When you look at the actual aggregate, you see that Baldwin is at 1.8 here on the side. So she's doing worse than Slotkin, which is pretty bad because she's an incumbent. So it's not like she has like this like new thing that she could like make people like her more in the next like 12 hours. So I just do not think that she's gonna do so well here. I mean, this is the closest polling she's ever had in her political history, I'm pretty sure. I mean, she won very easily in 2018. Hovde has this very photogenic face, very much befitting of a Wisconsinite. And I just think now is this time more than ever. I think Hovde did a great job in the debate, from what I recall, against Tammy Baldwin. And she's like 70, kind of getting up there in age, kind of looks like Elizabeth Warren. I just feel that she's going to lose. And, Hovde being so close in the polls is really nice because Hovde was really outspent, kind of like Carrie Lake was. And, for him to be so much in Trump's shadow in a good way means that if Trump were to win the state of Wisconsin by upwards of 2, I believe Hovde is going to beat Tammy Baldwin pretty decisively. I think Trump is on track to win Wisconsin by more than that. It's hard to poll, obviously, so it's hard to say either way. But I will give Hovde the slight victory here as well. So there we go. We have 57 Republican seats to the Democrats' 47. 57 Republican seats to the Democrats' 43. Again, it is 3 a.m. and I'm very busy, but that's my final result right there and prediction for the down ballot races. Just to recap really quick, again, 229 House seats for the Republicans, 206 seats for the Democrats, so an expansion of the House that's Republican. You have an expansion of the Senate lead for Republicans. It went from basically tied right now, 50-50 plus Kamala, to 57 to 43, which is fantastic. Again, my confidence intervals. I already discussed these elections at length. Some sleeper flips, by the way, would be, again, New Mexico. There's a 5% chance that goes Republican. Virginia's also, you can give that like a 2%. It goes Republican. You can give Rhode Island, not Rhode Island. You could give Maryland with Larry Hogan. You can give that a 0.1% odds of going Republican. So anyways, I'll leave you with that. And so I'll see you in the next one. Adios.